Hey everyone, today I'm going to be ranking the lightsaber stances of Jedi Survivor. This is from my experience with each, and from my pretty average skill level. Let's get into it. Double-bladed has slightly lower power than the average, marginally higher speed, a shorter range, and marginally higher defense. Potentially I think this is the weakest stance of the game, and although it feels a lot better than Fallen Order, the stance still just feels like it doesn't really excel at much. I found this never felt like it was necessary over a single saber, or just any of the stances really. It's marginally better at crowd control, but otherwise I don't think it excels at much. It's great for deflecting lots of blaster bolts, and it's definitely a stance you can feel quite powerful in as you windmill the blade, as barrages of bullets deflect away. The big downside of this stance for me is the incredibly low damage output, and the awkward feeling swings of the saber itself. For stronger enemies, it felt really bad to use this thing, I found. Blaster is next up, and a stance that lowers your power quite a bit and heightens both speed and range. For me, this is the weakest stance of the game, and it's partly because the blaster feels quite pitiful for damage. It's only above the double-bladed, as I think it has a little more utility. The blaster's main usage is just for cutting down those small health enemies that might slowly whittle away damage and make teamfights harder. Blasting them instantly is no doubt a big help. I like the interesting look of this stance, with it feeling almost like you were fencing, or the purpose of it was for dueling, and it actually felt good for that, and I think would have felt really great against bosses if the blaster was able to do literally anything, damage-wise. I did like how they incorporated the blaster to the stance overall, with it requiring lightsaber damage in order to replenish the blaster charges. The main takeaway from this stance was a lot of confusion. I felt very unsure what I was really meant to do with it. It felt like a bit of a mix of lots of different elements that didn't quite merge well. I almost feel like this stance should have been more range-based, maybe with the saber being held backwards and the blaster being a greater focus. Then when you're closer quarters, it shifts into heavier saber play, and the blaster only comes out for quick shots, something like that, I don't know. Dual Wield is the stance which feels like it requires the most momentum and almost a rhythm. I found that it can be highly effective and powerful as long as you keep moving, attacking quickly, and dodging hits. As when you take those hits, it feels maybe the most punishing out of any of the stances, with it really knocking that pace. Like the double-bladed, you lack range, which isn't so bad to be honest, due to the high speed. Your defense is also lower, but this can be pretty manageable, as ideally you are attacking fast enough that the lowered block meter really won't make much of a difference, unless you're taking fire from multiple heavy units for example. You're able to cancel attacks with Dual Wield too, which is really nice, particularly if you're someone like me who often panic spams buttons a lot in certain situations. I did find there to be weakness in some attacks. One of the initial backslash attacks you unlock often gets countered by stronger enemies. Overall, this stance is a lot of fun, undeniably, but it really requires you to be committed to a faster playstyle when you're dashing about, quickly eliminating enemies before the next one can approach you, alternately damaging and getting out before they can. I enjoyed it, but I think it's maybe just not quite my pace. I can honestly see how this one could be top for some people. Crossguard is the high power but very slow moving stance, and can be difficult to get hits on some of the quicker enemies. This is my personal favourite, as I found it to just deal a ridiculous, almost excessive amount of damage in some situations. It's particularly good for taking down larger creatures, and many of the mini-boss enemies. It very much feels like evening the playing field as you whip out the claymore to face down a large hammer-wielding enemy, or a larger droid for example. I did find that it was good for bosses too, jabbing off chunks of damage in small spurts. It actually made me play a lot more thoughtfully, as they would have to dodge very well before I was able to execute a stronger attack, as bosses typically have lots of unavoidable attacks and back-to-back attacks, followed by an opening. It was also very reliable I found for taking down lower health enemies and groups. Despite the slowness of the blade, blade, you aren't slowed, and can use your physical movement to your advantage with this stance, dodging and jabbing from behind for high damage, or even flipping over the enemy. Single, despite being the default stance, feels really great in my opinion. It does its job too at being average at almost everything. I found it to be particularly good for the bosses of the game, and for pretty much any enemy where I had to really focus on my parries for. It feels like a very precise stance, where you don't get confused by the flying or overcomplication of multiple things. You just focus on that one blade, and it moves in a way that feels straightforward and reliable. Many of the abilities will feel similar to Fallen Order, and it all just flows very nicely. Part of me wants to say this is the best stance, due to its standard nature, and its ability to just be so solid and reliable. Not an abundance of things to say for what is just the regular standard form of stance and gameplay, but it just feels very good. And I think the simplicity does make it the most balanced stance, and in many ways the most effective because of that. I never dropped into an area and thought, oh no, I should have switched off of single blade stance, like I did for some of the others. I felt like I could be more experimental and play to another stance's strength, with the single blade in the first slot and a more unique blade in the second. But I could always return to the single blade when I needed the consistency and some more time to relax and focus, without needing to try too hard to optimize a more unique style. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. Let me know what your preferred stance is down below. Thanks, and goodbye.